You don't overthink, you predict. And the problem is, you treat those predictions like they've already happened. Let me show you how fast this happens. You're mid-conversation, everything's normal. The exchange is running at exactly the temperature it should be. Then, they pause before answering. That's it. No words, no visible reaction, no signal clear enough to read with certainty, just a pause. And your mind fills it instantly. Something's off. They didn't like that. I pushed too far. Now you're not present anymore. You're adjusting, rewriting, filtering yourself in real time, trying to fix a version of reality that doesn't exist yet and may never exist at all. Because the pause was just a pause. The person was thinking, processing, present in exactly the way the conversation required. But you were already 2 steps ahead of the moment, inside a version of it your mind constructed before the moment had finished being itself. And here's the part no one tells you. This doesn't make you thoughtful, it makes you controlled. Not by people, by what you think they might think. So instead of speaking freely, you manage impressions. Instead of acting naturally, you calculate reactions. Instead of being in the conversation, you are monitoring the conversation from a position slightly outside it, observing how you are landing, adjusting in real time to signals that were never sent. And slowly, you become someone who is always watching themselves, instead of living. In this video, we're going to break that pattern, not by telling you to care less, but by showing you something deeper, why you care in the first place. And once you see it, you can't go back. The real problem. Here's the truth most people avoid. You don't care about people's opinions. You care about what those opinions could turn into. A shift in how they see you. A loss of respect that you can feel even before it's confirmed. A subtle distance that opens up in the space between what they said and what they chose not to say. That's what you're reacting to, not reality. Imagined consequences. The specific, detailed, completely convincing construction of what might happen, built from a pause, from a tone, from the absence of the confirmation you were looking for. And the construction feels real. It has the texture of evidence, the weight of something that has already occurred, the emotional quality of a situation that has already resolved, unfavorably, before anything has actually happened. Think about the last time you left a conversation and spent the next hour inside it, replaying the specific moment you said the thing that landed differently than you intended, rewriting the sentence, adjusting the tone, building the version where the landing was what you needed it to be. And none of it changed anything, because the moment was already gone. What you were doing, the replaying, the rewriting, the construction of the better version, was not reflection. It was resistance. The specific, energy-consuming, completely unproductive resistance of someone trying to control something that had already happened, by continuing to engage with it as if continued engagement could retroactively change what it produced. It cannot. And recognizing that, clearly, without the softening that makes it easier to continue the pattern, is where this starts to break. Epictetus understood this from inside the most complete version of having no control over what had already happened. A life of complete external constraint in which resistance to what was fixed was the most expensive thing a person could spend their internal resources on. He wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." Not because what happened didn't matter, because the resistance to it was costing everything and producing nothing. The moment was already gone. The only question that remained was what was being built in the time that had been given back. Pattern interrupt. Let's make this uncomfortable for a second. You don't want people to like you. You want control over how they see you. That distinction is the entire explanation of why it feels as intense as it does. Because liking you is something that happens naturally, or doesn't, based on who you are and how you show up. and whether the specific combination of what you bring matches what the person encountering it is ready to receive. You cannot engineer that. But control is different. Control feels achievable. Control has a method, the constant adjustment, the real-time monitoring, the careful management of what is presented and what is withheld, and how each element is calibrated to the perceived preferences of the person on the other side. And that method is exhausting, not because social interaction is inherently draining, but because performing inside social interaction while simultaneously monitoring the performance from the outside is two jobs being done at the same time with the same resources. Epictetus wrote, "If someone is able to anger you, it means you are allowing them to control you." Now extend that one step further. If someone's reaction, or the anticipated reaction, or the imagined reaction, or the reaction you have constructed from a pause before they have produced any reaction at all, changes how you feel, changes what you say, changes who you are inside the conversation, then they are controlling you, not intentionally, not through any deliberate exercise of influence, but effectively. And the control is not coming from them, it is coming from the space between what actually happened and what your mind decided it meant. That space is where the control lives, and that space is entirely yours. The loop. Here's why you don't stop. Because it feels useful. It has the specific texture of someone doing something important, of awareness, of growth, of the careful, responsible processing of someone who takes their relationships seriously enough to examine them. But here is the difference between genuine reflection and the loop. Genuine reflection leads to change. It takes the experience, extracts what it contains that is actually useful, and produces something different. A decision, a direction, a specific adjustment in how you approach the next similar situation. The loop leads to repetition. Same thoughts, same doubts, same conclusions. No movement. The loop is active, which is why it feels productive. There is something happening. The mind is engaged. Energy is being spent. The situation is being processed, or appears to be being processed. But it is not directional. You are moving but going nowhere. And the specific quality of that movement, the sense of engagement without the output of engagement, is what keeps it running past the point where it has produced anything of value. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "From inside the most complex set of situations available for processing, governing an empire through plague, war, and betrayal, confine yourself to the present, not because the past doesn't contain information, because the continued processing of a fixed event past the point where the processing produces anything actionable is not processing. It is a loop, and the loop is the specific mechanism by which the present, the only place anything can actually be built, is consumed by what has already passed. The big aha. You are not reacting to people, you are reacting to stories you complete in your head. That pause becomes rejection, that silence becomes judgment, that look becomes a meaning that the look never contained, that you placed inside it because the alternative, letting it stay unclear, letting it remain just a look, was less tolerable than the construction. Even if the construction was negative, even if the story you completed was worse than anything the actual situation was producing, because clarity, even painful clarity, feels more manageable than uncertainty, and the mind will produce certainty from any available material, a pause, a tone, the specific quality of a 2-second silence, rather than sit inside the ambiguity of not knowing. Seneca wrote, from inside his own documented proximity to situations whose actual reality was significantly less dangerous than the imagination of them. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Strip everything back, just the raw moment. The pause was a pause, the silence was silence, the look was a look. None of it contained what you added to it. The story was yours. The suffering that followed the story was yours. and the specific, exhausting, ongoing cost of living inside a version of events that your mind constructed from incomplete information was entirely self-generated, which means it can be stopped. The cost of not changing. If you keep doing this, it doesn't stay in your head, it changes how you live. Not in one dramatic moment, not in a single decision that you can point to and say, this is where it happened. In the accumulation, the daily, unremarkable, completely invisible accumulation of small adjustments, words not said, positions not taken, things not started, because the monitoring flagged the risk before the action had a chance to begin. You speak less freely, you hesitate more often. You second-guess decisions that an earlier version of you would have made without the delay. Not because you've become less capable, because you've become more cautious of perception. And caution of perception is the specific quality that turns capable people into people who hold back. And over time, that holding back becomes identity. Not a strategy you're employing, not a temporary adjustment to a specific situation. Who you are. The person who considers carefully, who doesn't rush, who takes time before speaking, all of which sound like qualities, and from the outside look like qualities, but from the inside are the specific experience of someone who has trained themselves to monitor the performance at the expense of the living. That is the real cost, not what people think, what you become while managing what people think. Breaking it. Here's the shift. You stop completing the story. That's it. Not a technique, not a reframe, not the performance of not caring over something you are still caring about at full intensity. The specific, practiced, daily built capacity to let the pause be a pause. To let the silence stay unclear. To let the look remain just a look, without the addition of meaning that the moment did not contain. Someone pauses, you let it be a pause. Someone reacts oddly, you let it stay odd, without resolving it into something your mind can file. No added meaning, no imagined outcome, no story completed from insufficient material. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." The harm was never in the event, it was in the story added to the event, the specific meaning placed inside a pause, a silence, a look, that the pause, the silence, and the look never actually contained. Stop completing the story, and the harm has nothing to work with. Identity shift. At some point, you have to decide. Do you want to be understood, or do you want to be free? Because trying to control how you are perceived costs you freedom. Every time. Not occasionally, not in the extreme cases where the monitoring becomes obviously exhausting. Every time. Because the monitoring requires the same resource that freedom requires, your full, undivided, unperformed attention. And you cannot give it to both. The person who is free is not the person who has successfully managed how they are perceived. It is the person who has stopped treating the management as a necessary ongoing task. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And the mastery he was identifying was not the mastery of other people's perceptions. It was the mastery of the internal process by which other people's potential perceptions were being allowed to determine what was said, how it was said, and who was present to say it. Freedom comes from this, letting people misunderstand you without needing to fix it. Not because you don't care about connection, because you care more about being present than about managing how your presence is being received. Final. Next time it happens, that pause, that silence, that look, don't complete the story. Ask yourself, did something actually happen, or did I finish the story? Because most of the time, you are not reacting to reality. You are reacting to a version of it your mind created, to protect you from something that never came. And the moment you stop finishing those stories, you stop living inside them. The conversation becomes a conversation again. The pause becomes just a pause. The silence becomes just silence. And you become just you, present, unmonitored, free. If this named the specific loop you've been running, send it to someone still inside it. Someone who is losing hours to conversations that have already ended, still trying to fix what was said in moments that no longer exist. And in the comments, 2 words: I see it. Not I'll try, not I understand. I see it, as the specific declaration of someone who has recognized the story for what it is and stopped completing it. Subscribe for daily wisdom built at this level. Understanding these ideas is one thing, living them daily is something else. If you want help applying this, I've put together a few simple systems: unshakable mental discipline, the 30-day mental discipline system, and the daily Stoic reset. You'll find them in the description. You stop living inside the story and start living inside your life.